Hi, I'm Sarah, your co-host of Entrepreneur Country TV. We continue to display the role of the entrepreneur in society. Today, I'm here with Scott Fulton from VIVA Investment Partners, who also happens to be one of my work colleagues. So I'm very excited to have him here today. Hi, Scott. How are you?
I'm well, Sarah. Thanks very much.
So I have a couple of questions for you that I would like you to answer in order to introduce you to our community so that they can all meet you and see this exciting person behind VIVA Investment Partners. So maybe we could start with having a little introduction to yourself and your background.
Sure. No, thank you. I suppose my background splits into three main areas. I started life as a stockbroker and as an analyst in the stockbroking community, and I specialized in the building and building materials sector. I actually joined that sector on the 1st of April 1990, which, as I'm sure as some of your audience know, April Fool's is a fairly important day. But I worked in that area until the turn of the century, until the year 2000, 2001, when I moved into financial public relations and investor relations, which I consider to be a continuum of what an analyst used to do. I won't bore you with what an analyst currently does. What an analyst used to do was to engage with the companies in their coverage, write about those companies with a view to presenting prospects of the company, and in the context of forecasts. So I was forecasting for companies in the building and building materials area. I then went into financial public relations, as I said, and spent most of my time working with companies, developing their press releases, developing their media strategies across Europe and in the United States. But the latter part of my professional background is to work with investors directly. I started off in this particular part with Equinity, which is a UK company, which formed to manage shareholding lists for the companies that were their clients, but they extended its work into proxy solicitation. So I spent a lot of the last 2 years working with companies who were either seeking to acquire other companies, seeking to defend from companies seeking to acquire them, or simply to change the way they did business via their shareholder meetings, their AGMs and their GMs. And that's brought me to VIVA. So I suspect,
Fantastic.
Moving on to VIVA,
Fantastic.
my role
So
at VIVA is an extension of that.
So what is it you're doing? What is your day-to-day job with VIVA Investment Partners?
So I work with a great team at VIVA, and I joined it for the people. I stay for the work, but my work is to help VIVA help its portfolio companies improve their communications. That's a wide and broad remit, but specifically we have three main areas or three main audiences that we communicate with on behalf of our companies. The first of which is the investment community. And that's really about using what our companies have in terms of financial reporting, but also the economic models that they use and the ecosystems in which they operate. And we bring that into a condensed communication stream, which allows our investors to understand the opportunities that we're seeing at these companies and also to attract new investment. But the second area is to work more broadly with the media, the financial media in particular, on behalf of our companies to get them to articulate where they sit in the ecosystem and in the continuum of the economics they operate. And I think the final area is really a more general communications within the businesses, but also within VIVA Investment Partners and Entrepreneur Country Global.
Fantastic. So could you tell me a bit about more what does Entrepreneur Country and Follow the Entrepreneur do? Because they do play together with VIVA Investment Partners.
Absolutely, yeah. So in effect, they are an extension of VIVA Investment Partners, but they are an extension in a very specific way. Follow the Entrepreneur is a means of communicating what we've seen in companies to a far wider audience. So if one looks at it in that sort of three-stage process, VIVA identifies the companies in which we want to invest and with whom we want to work. And there's obviously clearly specific reasons that we want to do that. We are, at VIVA, driving ecosystem economics. We are looking for companies which fit into an ecosystem, but more than that, actually can broaden the ecosystem to grow on a sustainable basis. When it comes to Follow the Entrepreneur, that is a component part of extending that communication so that we actually encourage our companies to take part, to share their ideas and their aspirations, but also to bring in other commentators so that we, again, expand the ecosystem, that we have more people talking about the things that are important to the people with whom we work. An Entrepreneur Country Global sort of, I think, brings it all together in that communication sense, to identify trends, to spot what's going on in the market and in other parts of the world, which will have an impact on the markets that we work for, and ultimately play back to VIVA, where we identify ecosystems where we should be taking a role. So it is connected, the fundamental interconnectedness of all things, but it is fundamentally, in my part, a communications role.
Fantastic. So how did you spot your talent for being part of the investment world? It's a very particular area, and how did you figure out that you are made for this?
Okay, there's a comparatively long answer to that comparatively short question. I studied economics in the UK, and the vast majority of the people I studied economics with were going on to work in the petrochemical industry. So I studied energy economics, and they were going off to work for Phillips and Conoco and Shell and BP. And I got up late. We ran, in my first degree, we had an industrial year where the third year of your degree was spent out in industry. And there was a long list of companies with whom you could go and work, Conoco, Phillips, and you could go all over the world in the petrochemical industry. But I got up late. And the last placement left for an aspiring economics graduate was to go and join a stockbroking firm called Lawrence Prust. And to that point, I had had no idea about stockbroking. But I went and spent 12 months with Lawrence Prust in 1986. It was a very tumultuous year. I saw Big Bang in London. I saw the move of trading from the stock exchange floor up to the offices that we now consider to be the city. I started working with a range of research analysts, and I fundamentally enjoyed it. Lawrence Prust had the good sense to offer me a full-time job after I graduated, and I went straight there after that. So how did I spot my talent for investment? I'd like to say it's because I like writing, I like understanding things, and I like being able to ask searching, but I think important questions of people who can offer me real answers. But ultimately how I got there was because I got up late.
I like that. So you're being surrounded by all these thriving entrepreneurs every day. Who is the entrepreneur you admire the most, and why?
Peter Tom. Peter Tom is from Cornwall. He played rugby at the professional level, but he came from a family of farmers from across the UK. And when he finished his professional rugby career, he was asked to join the family firm and run a quarry in Cornwall. He built that quarry into a company called Aggregate Industries, which was acquired by Lafarge in the late 1990s, early 2000s for a considerable amount of money. Not content with making a considerable amount of money and being a jolly nice chap, he then went on to found another company called Breedon, which is still listed on the London Stock Exchange and is still doing, even in this market, comparatively well. But the reason why I identify Peter and why I like Peter are two reasons. The first of which is that he allowed me to drive his Porsche 911. And the second reason is that he coined the phrase, for me anyway, that you don't shout at the moon and you don't curse the wind, because when the wind blows, you bend to it. Mm-hmm. He's somebody who has worked in a fundamental industry that provides rock, sand and gravel for building the UK and in parts of America. He was part of Boston's Big Dig back in the day. Not a business which is terribly technological, but he found an interest and an excitement in it to the extent that he grew companies which actually added to the environment in which we live. He was part of research and development for cambers on roads, which allow us to drive more safely. He was instrumental in the creation of smart motorways in the United Kingdom. And he's been instrumental in the way that they pave roads all across the northeastern United States. And yet you've never heard of it. He is the entrepreneur I think that I would like to spend the most time with. He also was the chairman of a rugby club called Leicester Tigers. And when we were both very much younger, he gave my two young sons Leicester Tiger rugby shirts, which I still have.
Oh.
Now, it is the ability to be a chieftain of capitalism, but still give wee rugby shirts to people's sons.
Fantastic. My last question for you today. What would you tell the 20-year-old Scott today?
Hire a lawyer, find out a lot more about prenup agreements. Actually, I would tell the 20-year-old Scott today, I would suggest to read more widely, to take more of it in. I think the 20-year-old Scott, I won't tell you how many years ago that was, but if I had that time again, I would have done more with less. I was quite focused, as I suspect a lot of my generation was when we came out. The 1980s was beset with recessions. The city or the financial markets were only just becoming democratized, and people like myself could join. So I became very focused. And while I know quite a lot about the equity capital market and a reasonable amount about the debt capital market, I don't know enough about Proust or how to fish or where I should walk if I have a day off. So I tell him, I suppose, two things. One, don't worry. And secondly, worry about other things.
Fantastic. Great, Scott. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time you took out of your day to have this interview with me. And yeah, looking forward to speaking to you soon.